On May 29, two federal security officers guarding a courthouse in Oakland, California, were ambushed by machine gun fire as elsewhere in the city demonstrators marched peacefully to protest the killing of George Floyd. One of the guards, David Patrick Underwood, died as a result of the attack, and the other was wounded. For days, conservative news broadcasters pinned the blame on Antifa, the loosely affiliated group of anti-fascist anarchists known to attack property and far-right demonstrators at protests. But the alleged culprit, apprehended a week later, turned out to be a 32-year-old Air Force sergeant named Stephen Carrillo, the head of a squadron called the Phoenix Ravens, which guards military installations from terrorist attacks. According to prosecutors, Carrillo and an accomplice, 30-year-old Robert A. Justice Jr., were part of the Boogaloo movement, a patchwork of right-leaning anti-government libertarians, Second Amendment advocates, and gun enthusiasts all preparing for another American Civil War. Authorities say that when they went to apprehend Carrillo at his residence, he attacked them with pipe bombs, killing a police sergeant named Damon Guswiller. Investigators found a Boogalo-themed patch in a vehicle used by Carrillo, and Carrillo had scrawled Boog, along with various Boogaloo slogans, in his own blood on the hood of a car. The Boogaloo movement originally grew from the weapons discussion section, K, of the anarchic anonymous message board 4chan over the past several years. By 2019, its culture had disseminated across social media into a mix of online groups and chat servers where users shared libertarian political memes. In the past 6 months, this all began to manifest in real life, as users from the groups emerged at protests in what became their signature uniform, aloha shirts and combat gear. As nationwide unrest intensified at the start of the summer, many Boogaloo adherents interpreted this as a cue to realize the group's central fantasy, armed revolt against the U.S. government. In Colorado earlier in May, then in Nevada in June, police arrested several other heavily armed self-identified Boogaloo members, who the authorities claimed were on their way to demonstrations to incite violence. Disturbingly, the Boogaloo movement is at least the third example of a mass of memes escaping from 4chan to become a real-life radical political movement, the first being the leftist libertarian hacktivist collective Anonymous, which emerged in 2008. The second was the far-right fascist group of angry young men called the Alt-Right, which formed in 2015. The conspiracy theory QAnon might be considered a fourth, but it is more than a political movement. At first glance, armed right-wing militants dressed in floral shirts may seem like another baffling grotesquerie in the parade of calamities that is 2020. However, their arrival can be explained by tracing their online origins. Similar to other right-leaning extremist movements, they are the product of an unhappy generation of men who compare their lot in life with that of men in previous decades and see their prospects diminishing. And with a mix of ignorance and simplicity, they view their discontent through the most distorted lens imaginable: internet memes. Since its founding in 2003, 4chan has attracted a unique population of deeply cynical men, once all young, but now aged from their 40s down to their teens, who generally use the board to express their angst through dark humor. People who are unhappy with the circumstances of their life tend to retreat there. The unhappier they are, the longer they stay and the more they post. The site was originally conceived as a blank slate, where anyone could scrawl what they pleased. Gen Xers and millennials started out wanting to talk about escapist fantasies such as anime and video games, but after 2 decades of economic crises and political deadlock, the discussion eventually evolved into cartoon-inflected talk of political mobilization. The birthplace of the Boogaloo movement, 4chan's K section, is ostensibly devoted to the ownership and purchase of weapons. But in practice, it is a space where weapons discussions combine with 4chan's politicized male anger. The name, Boogaloo Boys, is a reference to the critically maligned 1984 sequel Breaking 2, Electric Boogaloo. Around 2012, users on K began referring to the possibility of Civil War II electric Boogaloo. Half-serious posts about how certain weapons might be employed in the Boogaloo evolved over time and grew more elaborate. Like many memes on 4chan, each new version was more cryptic than the last, a means to express insider knowledge and in-group status.